Welcome back to Building HVAC Science. Got to say, this was another fun episode. Eric and I got to spend our time with Brynn Cooksey, a friend of both of ours. Brynn comes from a lot of different worlds: HVAC, contracting, building performance, trainer, educator. It just goes on and on. I put a ton of links in the show notes. I really think you should look at them and look up and see what Brynn is engaged in. He's gone from growing up in a family-run business to becoming an influential figure in the HVAC industry and building performance industry, just the industry. He's also become quite a skilled business person and also keen on marketing. You should take a look at his website. Really communicates well. We talk about a lot of these factors. Again, had a great time in this conversation. Encourage you to listen in closely as Brynn talks about transforming homes and training minds, the Brynn Cooksey approach.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Building HVAC Science Podcast. Eric Kaiser here. Bill Spohn right over there next to me, virtually. And we have a special guest again today, Mr. Brynn Cooksey. He is the owner of Air Doctors Heating and Cooling just outside of Detroit, and a whole bunch of other stuff. You own a training organization. You're partnered in with HeatSpring. Is that correct, Brynn?
Mm-hmm.
Well, welcome to the show. I've known you for a little while now. I think we met through RSES, so Refrigeration Service Engineers Society, for anybody who's not familiar with that. And Brynn and I have been involved with that for quite some time. Brynn, I want to know a little bit more about you today. And I want to know, how did you get where you're at in HVAC today? Because you are arguably one of the busiest people in this industry that I know.
Mm-hmm.
And building performance as well, because you're involved with building performance. You do BPI proctoring. You do a lot of stuff. So let's dig in here and learn some more about you.
Absolutely. First off, thank you guys for having me. Big fan of True Tech. I have to say, Bill, a lot of my discretionary income goes to True Tech for the different products that we buy. So if my wife sees you, she might throw something at you.
I'll keep my distance, Brynn.
That's where my allowance goes. Big fan of what you guys do. Thanks for having me on. Eric, to answer your question, I grew up in the industry like most folks. So my parents, they owned and operated a heating and cooling business. And as a kid, I can remember far back as 3 or 4 years old, dragging a vacuum pump to my dad so he can hook it up. Primarily in the summer times when I was out of school, that was the thing. So I grew up hanging out with my parents and my siblings, learning the business. And then as I got older and decided to want to have a family of my own, I needed a way to provide for myself. So it was a natural transition. So I started there. A lot of people had that same story. Growing up in the business, my family transitioned out, and it was a small company. I spent some time, about 15 years, working for the utility company. And my start at the utility company, I was a really young man. I was probably 20 years old. So I had just finished my apprenticeship. I was a young man, and I was introduced to all this 600-ton, 700-ton chill water systems. And it was a big leap from the residential equipment and stuff that I was accustomed with. And that transitioned me to RSES. So really, to get the training for a lot of that stuff, I started attending RSES meetings in the evenings when they had their chapter meetings. And I would go there and I would have specific questions, and I would bring it up to some of the senior guys and stuff like that. And really, that took off. So my big push in the industry has a lot to do with RCS. I learned a ton, able to answer a lot of questions and stuff that I had, the training material that I benefited from and stuff like that. And then naturally, a person, I like to continue to challenge myself. So I just put challenges in front of me to learn the equipment and the process and the business as much as possible. And that was my foundation.
Very nice. And all the other things which we haven't talked about yet, where do you think this drive comes from? This drive to achieve and succeed, I'll say.
Thank you. My parents, they had the same work ethic. It's evident in a lot of my siblings and stuff like that. If we're Cooksey men, the joke is if we're not working, we're working. No, my parents definitely, that's definitely something they instilled in us. So I can't take all the credit as we talk about some of the stuff that we do. I have a absolutely fantastic wife and partner who does a real job of helping raise our kids and stuff like that. And she supports me. And then my staff and my team, they allow me to really be hands off on a lot of my business ventures and focus on a design content and training and stuff like that. So I'll be remiss. Nothing that I do is on my own accord. I get a lot of help.
When you say team, a lot of people are finding not a lot of people available for this kind of work. How do you approach that? Is it the same in your area, and how do you approach it?
Yeah, fast forward, my parents were transitioning out and I assumed their business and basically I rebranded it Air Doctors Heating and Cooling. In that business, it was primarily family members. And as I was planning to grow it, initially starting off as a contractor, I had a hard time convincing people that this smaller, youthful company was definitely the place for technicians to go. In the midst of that, I was teaching at a couple community colleges locally. And that was my recruiting method for a while. I would teach night classes as I was working in the daytime for the business. And as I was teaching, I had the ability to see the pick of the litter. I would see students, their work ethic, their communication skills, their did they show up to class on time? And I was able to interview and look at them without them knowing. So once class was over, they were looking for employment and stuff like that. Well, I'll have a conversation. So most of my 10 techs that I have in the contracted business came from that avenue. So that's how I was able to find people. And then as the company grew and we were able to get things like benefits and 401ks and all that kind of stuff, we were able to attract people organically just because we had the stuff other contractors didn't.
Very nice.
What all do you guys do in your business? Because you and I have talked about this a couple times, and it seems like you go a little bit beyond a typical HVAC company.
Thank you for that, Eric. Initially, we was a traditional AC is broken, furnace is broken, we show up, repair it, parts changing organization, and then that will spawn a replacement sale if the equipment was old or defective. We operated like that for years, but probably about 20 years ago, I got bit by the building science bug. I took a BPI class and it changed my life. Not only it were things in a home and buildings that we were missing just because we didn't know that you can measure them. And once we took that BPI class, I incorporated a lot of things I learned into our business plan and our unique offerings. And with that, we transformed. It took a couple years and we went from we call it the box swapping race, the race to the bottom, but we were able to take a step back and look at the whole building and look at things like one common thing we can solve that many customers don't know that they can solve is like a hot upstairs here in Michigan. We were able to implement solutions that maybe the other contractors are not thinking about. Load calc was a big thing for us years ago once we started doing load calcs on every job and realizing how grossly oversized this equipment was. We started to use building science in our business to enhance it. And then about 2 or 3 years ago, we hired a local builder onto our organization and we start offering the shell modification. So building envelopes, so air sealing, insulation, dense pack insulation. So we transformed more from a heating and cooling company into a home performance company.
I'm seeing a couple companies trying to do that now. So it's exciting to hear that you've done this successfully. And from what I understand, you're doing it quite well, actually. We had a conversation this past year was it the BPA conference? Must have been the BPA conference. Anyway, the home performance conference. And you told me something that I thought was really unique that I have not seen anybody else do. And that was that your team does a blower door test on every single job where you're swapping equipment out. How do you get the homeowners to go for that? How are they receiving that when you say, we're going to do this? Is that just part of the service, or what do the homeowners think about that?
It's part of the service. So we basically, our business, we took a step back and we focus more so on measurements. So if a customer has let's say an antiquated system and they're interested in replacing it, we get them comfortable with the fact that, hey, how do you feel about your bills? Are they high? How do you feel? Are you uncomfortable in certain areas? By the way, we could test for that. And when we have that conversation with them, they move forward with the project and we do that testing. They see a lot of the things that they know is wrong with their home, but now we actually have the data to back it up. It's usually a conversation. A lot of customers are not aware that a lot of their solutions can be fixed. They just have to be measured through building science. Once we make them aware that we can test for it, they're blown away. They've never seen a contracted company do that to that extent, and they're usually pretty happy with the results. And it makes our load calcs really accurate. Maybe they can benefit from some air sealing or some insulation because it's leaky in this particular part of their house. So we now have the tools and capability to do that. We just have to tell the customers that we have that tools and capability. So one of the biggest things we changed in our business is just how we communicate.
What kind of examples do you use to bring somebody up? You said 20 years ago, started with the concept of whole home and BPI training. So you've got so much under your belt. Sometimes like people move so far away from where they started. It's like they're in different worlds. How do you make the conversation happen well, especially with a team?
For employees, when we onboard them, no questions asked, even CSRs and dispatchers in the office, they have to go to building science training. So we have a BSP course that they take. And a lot of them, we even support for them to get completely certified like the BPI. So that way they kind of understand the lingo and stuff like that. It's helped our culture. Everybody kind of understands what's going on. From the customer standpoint, the key to that is making sure that the customer understands they have a problem and then measuring it so they can understand that the problem can be fixed. So I liken it to trying to lose weight. If you don't diligently weigh yourself on a scale consistently to track your progress, you may not benefit from the fact that you may be losing weight. Same thing with communicating with a customer. If I show them that their duct systems are tight and I'm able to prove it, like using a tool that I bought from Bill.
I had to throw that in there.
Yeah, if I use a tool like that to measure airflow and I can show the customer, hey, here's a report, your ducts are tight. We have poor airflow. When we replace your air conditioner, we should modify the duct system. They have to know they have that problem in order to move forward.
Do you find going into these situations that your technicians are now going in with preconceived notions of what they're going to find, or are they going in with no preconceived notions? They're just saying, hey, we're going to walk in here and we're going to test and we're going to let the data lead us to a solution.
More the latter. We're going to test, but we've tested so many houses, we know and understand what we're running into. Like if we're in a neighborhood and we test so many buildings, we know if we tested this house down the street, they're probably going to have the same problem. So we test as a way to verify that the customer does indeed have the problem and then also that there's a solution. So every single job we test, like every service call, static pressure is measured, airflow is taken. Every install, we do a blower door test, if possible, unless there's something that will prevent that, like asbestos or something like that.
I wanted to mention one thing. You mentioned the acronym, and I'll make sure listeners who might not have heard this, BSP, that's Building Science Principles. That's actually a credential offered by the Building Performance Institute. There's a book that goes along with it, and you can take a test and you can get that credential, and it's open for anybody who's interested.
Thank you for that, Bill. Yep, absolutely. I highly recommend that people and everybody in every organization take that. It just helps to make sure everybody's communicating the same language.
It's a great starter course to just get your feet into it and say, hey, okay, this is something that I know I've got enough knowledge to talk intelligently about it.
I'll just bring up a situation. I'm standing in line at getting a drink at a conference. And somebody taps me on the shoulder and says, hey, Bill, you remember this?
I do remember that.
And this isn't a building science conference or an HVAC conference. What conference was this?
That was 10,000 small businesses sponsored by Goldman Sachs. So that was a business course that was really helpful. And the course we took, we were alumni. And this was like an alumni conference of people who've been through that course. So that was a business course that I attended a couple of years ago.
And I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes because that's open to anybody. There's some very low hurdles for a business. You got to be privately owned. So many employees, so much in sales, but like a real low, like $1 million in sales. And you can get in on this course and they're held in different areas. And yours probably, they had a center where they did it, your Detroit?
We did ours in the midst of COVID. So I took mine in 2020. So a lot of ours was virtual, but primarily now the pandemic is over. They're meeting at a campus here in Michigan locally, but it's uber valuable. You get to learn your numbers, financial data. A lot of technicians, they break into the business of contracting, and really contracting is about business skills more so than technical capability. So it's knowing your numbers, reading a profit and loss statement, understanding statement of cash flows, learning how to market, those things that are more critical for a contractor to be successful than technical capability. So I was a converted technician, and that's stuff I had to learn.
I was involved in the program in 2016, the fall of 2016. So I'll say that helped shape things for me at TrueTech, helps really focus on things. So again, I will put definitely a link in the notes. Anybody who has got a business and wants to tune it up, that's a good place to do it. And it also shows that as you learn technical and business together. So you'd mentioned the work at the night classes, teaching night classes and being there to take the pick of the litter. There's something else. I've seen a booth that you set up at some trade shows. Is it called HVAC Training University? Something like that?
HVACU.
HVACU.
That business idea, we actually formed that in 2010, and we're prompted that when we were doing low calc and duct design and seeing the benefits and stuff like that, our family, this would be great if we were able to share that, because maybe trade schools, they don't have enough time to cover things like that. And getting a low calc wrong in duct design can damage a contractor, loss of revenue, damage reputation. So we created a training organization to help contractors and technicians be successful. And we will host seminars, and basically that was our market. Since then, since 2010, the company's actually grown. So it's actually a licensed trade school here in the state of Michigan. And additionally, not only were we offering building science, we have electrical courses and also HVAC courses. But the building science piece is the one that really grew. We found that there's not enough workers, as you guys know, in HVAC, but building science is worst off. There's not enough people to do the audits and stuff like that. So one of our biggest clients are the two utility companies here in Michigan, and they basically use us to run workforce development programs. So we're able to train people from the community, help them learn building science principles, get them trained as auditors or shell workers or HVAC techs. And then we have a network of contractors that will actually go and hire our students from these workforce development programs. And contractors benefit, they get a well-trained person, and then they get to grow their business because they have a well-trained person where they can hire that person without necessarily spending the money to train them. So it's a win for everybody.
Where can somebody find out some more about that HVACU?
They can go to our website, www.hvactrain.com. So HVACTRAIN.com.
Are your sons enrolled in that?
They will be. They will be. That's how I learned.
I mentioned that before the show that Brent brought his sons to the HVAC Educators Conference last year. What kind of experience was that for them?
They are super pumped, and it's exciting for me because when I come home, I still have a service vehicle just to do testing and training. So if I'm out cleaning my vehicle or getting my tools organized and stuff like that, they like to love and just come hang out with me. So they have a lot of interest. So typically, my wife will travel with me to a lot of these shows or conferences that maybe we're speaking at. And if the kids are out of school, she'll bring them. And just so happened in ESCO this year, it lined up with their spring break. So once they got word that I had a couple of presentations, they were chomping at the bit to visit. So we talked it over with the ESCO crew, and they, in the back when they were watching and when I was done, they had actually some really, really good follow-up questions about what we were talking about. So that was really exciting to see, and I'll support them to do whatever they want, but I'll be happy if they follow a path in the business.
That's really cool to see young people like that getting really interested in going to events and thinking about that while they're even still in school.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've got the chance to meet both your boys as well, and they're a lot of fun, and man, are they sharp. But I think they take after their dad in that respect.
Thank you. Thank you.
Something else you do a lot of that I've seen following you around on Facebook and some of your other social media platforms, actually two other things I've seen you be really passionate about is electrical generators. So I'm guessing you've put some electrical work into your business as well, but also combustion testing. And those are two other things that combustion testing we really should be doing as HVAC. I haven't seen a lot of people doing generator work in that yet. How did you fit those two into your business as well?
So part of my background at the utility company, I spent 15 years there. Part of my training, I was a commercial electrician. So I got licensed through the utility company, and it was a natural offering. And reason why we got off into that market is similar profit margins to HVAC equipment. It's probably a faster installation process. There's a need. So locally in Michigan, a lot of the older communities have a lot of trees, and the infrastructure is above ground. So if you get a big storm or windstorm, there's definitely a need. And we were looking to offset the lull that happens with the slow seasons with traditional HVAC businesses. So generators, we started that probably about 10 years ago. And that actually is our second biggest business unit. We sell quite a bit of those.
That's pretty neat. Do you also do combustion testing then on every gas product you touch? Do you do things outside of the furnaces and things like that? What else do you test with combustion?
Heating service call, if it's a combustion appliance, it gets probed no matter what. We take an analyzer, and our guys use customized checklists. So every piece of equipment gets thorough inspection if we're there, just to capture any problems. One, for record keeping purposes, and then two, it helps us identify maybe more glaring things that we would have skipped if we were not thorough. One of those things is combustion testing. I have to tell you, that was probably one of the first things we implemented when learning building science. And that changed my life. A lot of these pieces of equipment that I'm afraid to admit that if I didn't have that analyzer, I probably would have repaired and left in service. And then once I start testing the amount of things that you find in the high CO levels and stuff like that. So across our fleet, everybody has an analyzer. We even have a couple spares. It's like a non-negotiable. You have to test combustion.
Wow. You said non-negotiable a couple times a year. Man.
Mm-hmm. Non-negotiable. It has to be done. If an analyzer dies or a sensor goes out of whack in the midst of it, we roll another truck to get those numbers. It just has to be done. That's how important it is to us.
This is an audio podcast, but we're sharing video here for our conversation. And I notice you're wearing a shirt that has one word on it. What does that word mean?
To contribute to the busyness that Eric was talking about, I'm working part equity in a software company called Pearl Edison. And what we're doing with Pearl Edison, we are creating a software program that's going to make it easier for customers to understand the incentives for electrification products like a heat pump. Once they do their research, they can see upfront pricing. They can see what the financing would cost. They can also see what kind of climate impact their system selection would cause, and then potential savings. So it's a software program that is customer facing. The customer can go through it and they can put information in about their house. It does a block load to get us an idea of what kind of equipment is in there based on their responses. And then if the customer decides to move forward, an advisor will go out and confirm the load calc details, make sure the job is feasible, and then discuss with the customer to move forward. And then from that point, that created work order goes to a network of contractors that I'm helping recruit. That way we get good contractors. So that's our newest endeavor, software company that we're working with. And say hello to Jake and Evan. So they're the co-founders, so I'm helping them with their technical development.
Where would we find that? Or did you have a link for that?
I'll send you a link. The website is pearledison.com.
Sure. Makes sense. And Edison, to me, sounds like a utility.
Sort of. So the name came from Thomas Edison's invented the light bulb at Pearl Street Station in New York.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's where the name comes from. So basically, right now it's focused on heat pumps and electrification measures. So eventually we'll be adding electric vehicle chargers where customers can get legitimate information. That way it's not biased. They can get information about heat pump water heaters, which are heavily incentivized now. So that's our software initiative.
So something else I noticed you doing recently as well, because another thing you need to be busy on is I noticed that you're also involved with HeatSpring. HeatSpring is a training organization?
Yep, HeatSpring's a training organization. I partnered up with their owner, Brian Hayden. What he's done, he's taken our building science curriculum and he has it on their platform. So people, if you can't make it to an in-person class, and you need to take some training, building science training. A lot of our BPI course offerings are loaded onto HeatSpring. So I do asynchronous training. It's recorded lectures, computer-based training that people can take. And then once they're done, we interact with them to maybe proctor their exams and stuff like that. So,
in order to do all this, Eric says you're busy. I know you are, but you must employ some technologies. Would you care to share like the technologies and systems that you use?
First and foremost, the training business and the contracting business, because I have such awesome staff, they pretty much run day-to-day operations. So outside of me supporting them with maybe a decision that they need help with, they pretty much take care of themselves, which is a blessing. I have some really great people here with both organizations. As far as technology, I use a lot of AI tools to help with calendar scheduling and stuff like that. I focus more so on bigger picture and solving problems, and the things that I need to delegate, I do. So that way I'm not bogged down with some of the details. So doing that, I've heard some pretty funny things about me. Like I've heard some people say I have a time machine. Some people say I can get more hours out of the day. I've heard I've been cloned, but really it's just prioritizing the right things and having really, really great people to help you. So that's been our secret.
Some people that are really busy look like anxious and nervous, and you're not.
Yeah.
My theory is he doesn't sleep.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. That's another one I've heard.
I'm pretty sure he just works like at least 28 hours a day.
I've heard that one too. Nope, not the case, man. I guess like I said, my wife, Jay, my office managers, Melissa and Miles, my whole team, they take good care of the things they need to. And basically, I just look at it from a 10,000 foot view as far as managing things. So that's the secret. That's how we're able to accomplish so much. It's a lot of work to do. We got a lot of things that's working against us. We have federal incentive that a lot of people don't understand how to implement. And then we have market transformation. And then we have new refrigerants. And then we have aging workforce that we need to train. So, I mean, we have a lot of problems. So, yeah, looking to help them.
And I got to talk to some of your team this past year at the Building Performance Conference or the Home Performance Conference. And they were just extremely excited. You had your office manager there, and she's talking about how she got to go out and test houses and figure out how they work and find the problem. And she was excited to go get her BPI certification. And that was an amazing thing to me, that you're bringing in that whole team holistically and teaching them many, many aspects of the business that they might not touch daily. But it was kind of a realization to me like, hey, now they know that they can talk intelligently to those customers.
Yep.
That was a really interesting approach to me, but it sounds like it's working really well for you.
It works amazing. We get leads, business leads from them chatting at the grocery store. They're in the fresh fruit section and talking to a random stranger. Maybe they have their shirt on. They bring up, yeah, on this project I saw we were able to reduce their customers' bills by 50%. Call me tomorrow. We'll tell you about it. There's been a lot of actually business generated that way because they're armed with the information to chat about it. So I will always continue to empower our employees with as much knowledge as possible because it just makes my job easier. Makes me less busy.
There's a process we follow at TrueTech called Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS. And like the first chapter in the book, Traction, first sentence is almost letting go of the rope. Sounds like you've let go of the rope.
I have. It took a while, but once you got good people and you trust them, it's pretty fun. So now they tap me to solve problems. Maybe they can't, or they just want to make sure that they're making the right decision. But outside of that, they pretty much run themselves.
It might be a hard question to answer. Do you think anything is distracting you right now besides podcasters?
One of the things to focus on that I have to keep in front of myself daily is making sure it's not a distraction, but I have to make sure I'm specific about spending appropriate amounts of time with the family and then also taking care of myself. So that has been a huge focus of mine, just to make sure that you lost in trying to help an industry that those things are not neglected. So those, I'm pretty diligent now about making sure those things are taken care of. And then from that point, no, I'll handle the problems as they come. So I don't necessarily know about a distraction, but no, the fact that the family's involved in the business and they enjoy it, and the fact that the employees are so bought into it, it makes it easy for it to be interwoven. It's not a huge deal. I enjoy my day-to-day operation.
Sounds like you got a lot of fun going on there.
I do. I have a blast. Every day is an adventure.
I brought up your website here, and I really like the way it speaks to people. Whatever's on their mind, you're pretty much covering it. I like the peace of mind, whole house comfort, cleaner air, reduced energy bills, quieter operation. It's like nirvana. What would you want?
Talking to customers, those are their concerns. So we want to make sure that we speak to them. And we are using the concerns of customers in our marketing messaging just to make sure that, hey, if this is something, that loud AC unit, it doesn't have to be loud. We probably need to resolve that. So that's deliberate. And I thank you for that compliment.
So I'm curious here. It sounds like you've said you got a ton of great people. I'm curious what you look for in a person when you're going to hire someone.
Mm-hmm. Very good question. 100% temperament. I feel, with a training background, I feel I can teach you pretty much anything if you have the acumen. But I look for more communication and temperament skills. What kind of person are you? Are you a team player? How do you communicate? And are you reliable? Those are more of because I don't have the time to micromanage. So I look at those things, and we ask specific questions in our interview process to flush out if those things are there. And if they're there, we'll train you. That's not the issue. But those are some of the things we look at.
At TrueTech, we try to use questions like, tell me about a time when.
Yes.
That gets that experiential aspect. And it's not about, are you? Anybody's going to answer yes to something that's a high held value. But tell me about a time when, yes.
One of our questions is, what situation have you had where you made a mistake and it cost some money? How'd you resolve it? And they have to come up with something. And a lot of our interviews are essay form. So they have to write specifically to that question, and we discuss their responses. you get some interesting perspectives. And the overall message is, are you reliable? Do you communicate well? And what's your temperament? If it gets busy or you got an upset customer, you got to be able to handle that professionally. So what's your temperament?
I get the impression you're not seeking attention, but you're probably getting attention. That's right.
Yeah, I would say that, especially with market transformation and heat pumps. I'll say more now, I'm getting tapped to talk about how to implement heat pumps in a cold climate. That's probably been our biggest request, and it's coming from all over the place just because you have contractor resistance where older contractors may feel that heat pumps maybe won't work in colder climates. So one, maybe individuals like people at the DOE are asking, hey, Brynn, how can we get the messaging out that heat pumps they can work in cold climates, but it's just a specific way how you do it. And then we're also getting tapped to help the customers understand making the right decisions. So for example, if they get an all-electric system and you're in a cold climate, what kind of impacts? Are there bill impacts? Will your bill increase? Is your house weatherized? We've been asked to provide a lot more of that feedback. So as customers are trying to take advantage of the incentives, so the Inflation Reduction Act, they're armed with the best information so they don't get a heat pump in and it's all electric and it's super cold and their bill is $1,000 a month. So we've been getting a lot of attention primarily in that respect to help customers and contractors in that regard. With a lot of the workforce training that we've been doing, we're getting a lot of traction on trying to help other organizations develop the same thing so that they can help staff the workforce. So we're getting it, not seeking it, but we're getting asked to help out, which we don't mind.
You can tell.
Yeah.
Because you accepted this invitation in the middle of summer. How about giving us some closing thoughts here to our listeners?
This is a super awesome industry that I grew up in and has fed my family for 3 generations. And I am extraordinarily humble to play such a part that I play in. So definitely thank you for you guys for this platform to discuss what we're doing. And thank you for build your business and how it supported the industry. A lot of people don't recognize how having a platform for using the right tools for the job makes technicians' jobs easier. I want to put the message out that we need to upgrade our training. As a technician and contractor for many years, I still see a lot of bad habits, and I would like to see better training throughout the industry. And I think we're pushing the right direction, but that would just be a message to improve our training so that way customers benefit from our technical skills.
One thing I'd like to do is thank your parents by name. What are their names?
Bobby Sr., so Bobby Cooksey Sr., and then Peggy Cooksey.
Bobby and Peggy, thank you so much for giving us Brynn.
Yep.
Any closing thoughts or questions, Eric?
I think we covered a lot of stuff here, and I could sit and talk to Brynn for hours. We've got a lot in common, and I've been good friends with him for quite a while, and I consider him a good friend. So we better quit, though, because otherwise we're going to run out of time.
Be a 3-hour podcast.
Right.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Brynn.
Thanks, Brynn.
Thanks again for spending your time with us for this little journey with Brynn Cooksey and talking about transforming homes and training minds, the Brynn Cooksey approach. If you have any questions or want to suggest a topic or reach out, you can reach us at marketing@truetechtools.com, TRUTECHTOOLS.com. And some of the topics we discuss require technical training for proper interpretation or safe execution. If you're a trained pro, you can go right ahead. And if you're not, please consult with and hire a trained pro. The Building HVAC Science Podcast is a production of True Tech Tools Limited. In full disclosure, I'm a co-owner of True Tech, and Eric Kaiser is one of our employees, our industry engagement manager. You'll find him out there engaging with the industry very often. The opinions voiced are those of my guests, my co-host, myself, depending on who's speaking, of course. And if you're in the market for any tools or test instruments mentioned in our podcast, take a look at what True Tech Tools carries, TRUTECHTOOLS.com. You can use the offer code HVACBS for a nice discount. And as always, thank you for listening to and following us on the Building HVAC Science Podcast. Until next time.